Hi everyone, it's Katie from the Annapolis Maritime Museum. Today we are going to learn about erosion and go on a scavenger hunt to look for signs of erosion and learn more about this force of nature. Have you heard of erosion before? The term describes a process by which the Earth's surface is worn away and then moved somewhere else. You might have heard the term weathering, which is the simple act of materials breaking down, like rocks breaking into smaller rocks and eventually turning into sand as they are tumbled by waves. Erosion involves these materials breaking down and then being transported elsewhere. What causes erosion? Well, anything that has the power to move soil, rock, or other surface materials. Think like wind, water, glaciers, or plain old gravity. Did you know that the Grand Canyon was created by erosion? Moving water in the Colorado River carved out the landscape over millions of years and is still changing that landscape today. The shape of the Chesapeake Bay and its tributaries are influenced by erosion as well. Erosion has shaped mountains, valleys, shorelines, and even your own backyard. So let's go look for some signs of erosion around the park campus of the Annapolis Maritime Museum. Follow me. All right. So when we are looking for signs of erosion, we want to look for areas where the natural surface of the earth has been worn away. So look for areas where water might flow, wind might blow, floodwaters might rise, waves might crash, or gravity. So higher elevation to lower elevation. All of these are areas where erosion can occur. All right, so for my first example of erosion, what I want to show you is this hillside. I hope you can see that there's some elevation change from the top of that hillside all the way down to the bottom. And what I see here is that there's this kind of path that's cut into the hill and carved out. And I know from experience that after a big rainstorm, this hillside becomes a muddy mess. And that carved out line that I'm seeing going down the hill is from where the water travels. So it goes down the hill, gravity, right? Water travels downhill. And a lot of that sediment gets pulled off that hillside because there's not a lot of plants there to hold it in and to protect it. And it gets transported down the hill and then right out into Back Creek, which isn't too good. So the first sign of erosion that I see on this hillside is that like carved out path. And the second thing that I see is that the roots of some of those trees are exposed. So there's not a lot of plants along the ground to hold that topsoil in place. So let's go see if we can see another spot where we see erosion. All right, for our second stop along our erosion tour, I've come to our shoreline. So take a look for a moment to see if you see any signs of erosion. So what would cause erosion along a shoreline? Well, water moving, high tide and low tide, also runoff coming down this hillside, flooding. Those are all things that could cause erosion along the shoreline. And then the signs of erosion that I'm seeing, again, exposed roots from the trees just like we saw along the hillside. And then the color of this water. What caused this brown, murky color of the water? Well, a lot of it's caused by sediment getting into the water, which can cause lots of issues. All right, so now I have a challenge for you. I'd like you to go outside, whether that be in your backyard or to a local park, and look for signs of erosion. So look for areas where the natural surface of the earth has been worn away and then moved somewhere else. So look for where water might move, where wind might move, floodwaters might rise, a big rainstorm could carry off sediment somewhere, and then maybe look to where that sediment might be moving to. So take either a photo or a video and let us know what you see. So I hope you enjoyed that challenge and went outside and found some signs of erosion. But you might be asking yourself, why are we so concerned with erosion? Well, erosion is a natural force. It's been happening on Earth as long as the Earth has existed. But humans can actually impact erosion, can increase the rate of erosion, and erosion can have some really negative impacts on the environment. So let's think about it. When that top layer of sediment gets weathered and worn away and then transported somewhere else, that can be a loss of habitat. That top layer of soil is really important. That's where a lot of plants grow and where there's a lot of nutrients for those plants. So when that sediment gets washed away, there's not a lot of plants on the surface, and we need those plants for animals. That's food for them, it's habitat for them, but it also helps keep that soil in place so that when there's a big rainstorm, all that extra sediment doesn't just wash downstream. So after rain, go outside and look where all that sediment is moving. Well, it's always going downhill. Gravity makes water flow downhill. So erosion can also cause a lot of problems with water quality. So if you look downstream and the water looks really murky, where's all that sediment coming from? Well, it's runoff. It's coming from the water along the land and getting into the water. Extra sediment in the water, while it's not toxic, it can cause a lot of issues. So think about the plants that are trying to grow in the water. Plants grow on the land, but there's also plants that grow in the water. We call these submerged aquatic vegetation, underwater grasses, or SAV. Those grasses, same as the plants on the land, need sunlight to grow. And if the water is dark and murky, they can't get that sunlight. Well, why do we need grasses in the water? Well, think about it again. Why do we need plants on the land? The animals in the water also need food, and they need habitat, and they need oxygen. So those underwater plants are giving all of those things to the aquatic critters, just like the plants on the land give to the land critters. So it's really important that we maintain water quality, good water quality. So one thing that's really quite concerning is that due to climate change, there's increased frequency of really intense storms, and that results in flooding. And we talked about moving water. Moving water can create more erosion. And that means more sediment getting down into creeks and streams, and then eventually leading to the Chesapeake Bay, if you're in the Chesapeake Bay watershed like we are. And then with that more sediment getting into the water, causes all of those issues we talked about with water quality, but then all of those little creeks and streams can actually kind of get clogged up. And then even more flooding can get created in the next big rainstorm. So we really want to be careful and help create and lessen the impacts of erosion. So don't worry, this whole story is not all doom and gloom. So our next part of our video, we are going to go look at some things that humans can actually do to help. And if we all do something small, we can make a big difference. So we can actually help reduce erosion or limit erosion. So the first step, of course, is looking to where there is erosion. So you did that step already. And now we want to start brainstorming things that we can do to help limit that erosion. So let's go look at some things that we do here at the Annapolis Maritime Museum.
Well, the first thing you can do to prevent erosion is really easy. It involves staying on the trail. So when you are walking in an area, stay on the trail instead of creating a million different little side trails. This helps protect the plants that are growing, the sensitive plants that if you're walking all over them will no longer be able to do their job, which involves helping to keep that top layer of soil in place and providing habitat and food for all the animals that live there. So stay on the trail. That's pretty easy. Second thing you can do, also fairly simple, plant some plants. So if you see an area where it's kind of muddy, research some native plants that might like to grow there. Lots of plants love to live in areas where it's kind of wet. So that's another thing we're doing here at the Maritime Museum, is helping to maintain this shoreline. But it doesn't have to be along a shoreline. Anything upstream would help carry sediment down to, Back Creek here on this campus, or anywhere where you are, into a little creek or stream. So we want to keep that sediment in its place. So find some plants that would love to grow in a nice, moist, muddy area, and that'll help keep that sediment in place. So the next thing I'm going to show you is that we have this really cool patio that actually helps to slow down erosion. So a patio normally is solid. It's what we call a impervious surface. So when it rains, rainwater can't go down through a patio. It's solid. But actually, this patio here is made of these things called pervious tiles, and you can actually see that there are plants growing in between the little gaps. So when it rains, the rainwater can go in between those pavers and soak down into the soil underneath, instead of just hitting a solid surface and picking up speed and running really quickly down into the land surrounding it and tearing up that soil and dragging it down into the local stream or creek. Instead, that water seeps into the soil here and can help a lot of plants grow, keeping that sediment out of the water. Another normally impervious surface is the roof. So I've climbed onto the roof of the Annapolis Maritime Museum, but this does not look like a normal roof. We actually have a green roof. There are plants living on a section of the roof of the park campus. So instead of water hitting the tiles on your roof and picking up speed again and running off and hitting the land with that extra speed to tear away that top layer of sediment, it actually hits these plants and they love it. So these plants grow on our roof and help to protect our building as well as to prevent extra erosion.
All right, so last but certainly not least, one thing that you can always do is to go teach others something that you learned. And that, with all of us making some small changes or doing some small bits of stewardship, can make a huge difference. So I hope you learned something today that you can go teach others. Something about what is erosion, some of the negative impacts that erosion can create, and things that humans can do to make a big difference. And my last challenge for you today is to go and think about, brainstorm, that location that you identified erosion in earlier. What are some of the things that humans could do to help in that area, to help prevent or slow down erosion in that area? So think about it and maybe get some people together and do something about it. Thanks for watching, and I hope together we'll all be even better environmental stewards and make a big difference. Hi everyone, it's Katie from the Annapolis Maritime Museum. Today we are going to learn about erosion and go on a scavenger hunt to look for signs of erosion and learn more about this force of nature.